Okay, so another student example. So working from a student's file in class, maybe making some recommendations for both this scene as well as something that might be applicable to the rest of you. So looking at this file in class, and we have this set up with the Uber camera. I'm going to focus on just a specific range in here. So the whole idea is that the ball is going to jump onto, in fact, where's this cut make? We'll make this at 165. Okay. All right, so at 165, we want to see that the ball hits this button, right? But then what we see is the first stair appears, and the ball is kind of cut off a little bit awkwardly in the scene. We want to see it kind of start to do this really cool little jump sequence, right, up the stairs. And it cuts to another shot where it goes through this to the top. But maybe in this, I would say that it cuts in places. So right here, I think it's working pretty well, and we see it go past. But it's a little awkward on these first couple, right? And then we have to cut to another shot up here until we get to the other. So how could we do this as maybe one camera, or at least a camera that sees the action for a little bit longer? And the answer is obviously that we need to animate it, right, so that it moves with that. But we want to do this in a smooth, clean fashion. So I'm going to show you the camera I just created, and then we'll delete and do this together. So I set this up so we can still see that action happen with the button. Now the camera rotates kind of around the staircase and follows our little ball right along this path. And it's pretty consistent, right? It's nice and clean. We get a sense of the the scene, right? We understand where everything is as we rotate around it. And then we kind of let it pause so that it goes off camera, and then maybe it would cut to the scene at the camera at the top where it's going to jump onto the pillar. All right, so how was this done? Pretty simple, but if you're not experienced with setting up these camera rigs, it'd be a little challenging. And the cameras can go haywire sometimes. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that where it's at. And I'm just going to switch to camera 1, which is a duplicate of that same camera. So it's not doing anything, right? So I set up this camera with the idea that I wanted to be able to see this action. And I'm going to rotate it around the scene, right? And I don't want to just keyframe the camera. In fact, I don't want to do anything to the camera for camera 2. I want to use something else as the pivot. And obviously this staircase appears around the pillar. So let's go ahead and just create a locator. And a locator is just a dummy object, right? It's just a point in space, and it's got a little widget on. In fact, I'm just going to do this, hide that one. So I'm going to take this little locator, and I'm just going to position it towards the center of the pillar. It's not exact. I'm not aiming for exact here, but this should work. And I also moved it up just a little bit so I could see where it is. In fact, let's just make it a nice round number. Let's put it at 2. And let's make this one -5. Okay. So I've moved this over, I've moved it up, and what I'm going to do is take the camera 1 that I'm currently looking through, and I'm just going to parent it to that locator, right? All right, so so what I want to do is I want to be able to take this locator and spin it, and I also want to animate it moving up at the same time. And it really helps when you set camera rigs and you're dealing with these rotations to kind of isolate things where if this is doing one movement, like one direction, and then this is pivoting, looks nice and clean. If I needed the camera also to move away or in one of these other directions, I might create a second locator and parent that. So you can think of one as up and spin, and the other one as, out and tumble. Like you can just separate what these rotations are for each one of these objects. Especially with rotation, it can be very, very helpful just because the nature of the way the rotation is calculated. All right, so we'll go here. Just go to my shaded mode here so we can see this. All right, so it hits maybe right in here somewhere. I'll call this frame 200. What I'm going to do is start this little rotation. So I'm going to go ahead and select that locator, right, that the camera's part of. And I'm just going to keyframe its translate, and I'm also, because we're going to spin it, right? So this is going to be rotate Y. So we'll key that selected. And then we'll just move our way. Let's go about halfway, 260. And I'm just guessing at numbers. So 6, that looks pretty good. And let's try this, 40, minus. So in this case, it's going to be minus something. So I'm doing this just numerically because as I'm looking through the camera, if I reach out and grab this locator and spin it, because I'm looking through the view while I'm spinning, Maya will have a hard time calculating this, right? So I'm just going to do this by hand. I have a good idea where I'm going, right? 5.5. I can always modify this later. 5.25 maybe. Maybe this should be like, well, let's just see what it does. Let's just key select there. And key select and let's see what we get. Right, so already this is starting to track pretty good. And I'm going to go just a little bit further to the, maybe I'm going to leave off there at 290. So again, let's move it up a little bit. I'll say maybe 8. And let's minus 90. And let's make this 7.75. 7.5 maybe. Right? I just want it to kind of stay towards the center of the frame. It does not have to be perfect, and I don't want to use like a target camera. All right, so that's pretty clean, I think. So we see the action, we see what's going on, we see the relationship. The camera kind of hints at the reveal, right? As we spiral along the pillar, then the steps appear, right, as we do this. And we get a sense of that motion, that spinning motion, as we come across with the ball. We also, from this point of view, the bounces look pretty clean and solid to me, right? There's a little glitch on this one right here. But the rest of these, you can see where it's kind of landing and building energy. I think this is really nice. And this is a good point of view to see that action, right? If we look at it from another direction, we might not get a sense of how that is unfolding, right, as it goes. But all these look pretty good. In fact, I would just change maybe that first one maybe has a little glitch, but the rest of these are working really well. Okay, so let's just recap. You can use these locators with the camera itself. We would just simplify some of these motions, right? The whole idea is the camera is just along for the ride, right? It's on some kind of rigging system, right? Some kind of crane, dolly, what have you. And it's also meant to be smooth and clean, but also accentuate or emphasize the motion that's happening in the animation. All right. It also eliminates maybe some of these cuts between different cameras that maybe would become too much, a little confusing. All right.